Hey traders, this is Blake Morrow with Traders Summit, and today, as every Friday, I have Mr. Richard Matthews from GC Partners. Hey Dick, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing, Blake?
I am doing great, and I'm so excited to actually have this specific conversation with you because we're going to talk about on episode 4. We're going to talk about. Oh, and by the way, just for those of you that are listening in, this is episode 4 of our Tales from the Trading Desk series with Mr. Richard Matthews. And we want to talk a little bit about what the wine and dining was like back in the day. So
my specialist.
Tell us, I gotta say this. My son, who's 14, trades crypto. He uses one of our Robinhood accounts, and he trades like equities too. He's 14, right? He really wants to see the Wolf on Wall Street, but I think he's still a little too young to do that. So tell us your Wolf on Wall Street stories. Let's hear them.
I don't know about Wolf on Wall Street. I mean, we certainly weren't a spank shop or a boiler room. I mean, we were a serious money brokers to the gentry. I used to claim I wouldn't deal with any old riffraff. But one of the key things that we had those days, which sadly has got to a large extent, in my opinion, is we had to build relationships with our clients, which were the bank traders. There were, I think, 26 brokers at the time, all competing. So you'd had 25, I'd had 25 rivals chasing after the same business. And the better I got to know a guy and the better he got to know me, the better relationship that we had and the more likely I'd be to get the business out of the guy. And we did this by getting to know them and entertaining the clients very, very heavily.
So when you would entertain, now this is where it could get a little sketchy maybe, or maybe there are some stories that you shouldn't tell us. But let me ask you this. You would entertain clients. You'd be, I mean, it's interesting. I don't live in your typical money center. When I moved back home, let's put it that way, 8, 9, almost 10 years ago. And, as the technology has allowed me to work from home and trade from home, but I'm now in an area where it's filled with people in the medical sales industry. And these guys are kind of remind me of the way business was done years ago in the financial industry, where they really wine and dine their clients. So tell us a little bit about how you did that with your clients back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, but the first thing to remember is back then Canary Wharf didn't exist. And it was just a dream in some planner's idea. And the financial district was centered around the square mile. It's literally a square mile in the city of London. So we were all within walking distance of each other. We'd hardly ever leave the city to go to a restaurant outside of the city. So there would be restaurants that I would go to. There'd be restaurants that brokers from Marshalls would go to, or brokers from other brokers would go to. So typically we would drink in a pub called Shorts, and that would be the RP Martin pub. And then MW Marshalls, who were a big FX broker at the time, they would drink in the Hatchet. And Guy Butler Till, which is long gone now, they would drink in the Bow Wine Vaults. And we would go out and we'd drink and we'd entertain our clients. We'd break lunch up into 2 shifts. So we'd have a shift from 11:30 till 12 o'clock. And then from 1:30 until 2 o'clock. So the rest of the time, everyone would go out. You just had 2 people left in the office between 12 and 1:30. So everyone else was out. And the ones who were left in, it was called doing the barrel. And you'd either got drunk the day before, or you screwed something out. And that was your punishment, that you had to sit there and twiddle your thumbs whilst the whole world was out.
I was going to ask you, is that, I thought it might've been more of on a seniority type of level. No,
no, it was great. Well, there were certain people who never got involved in it. And the entertaining was so hard, not hard. So it was so determined, I think is probably the word, that we were determined to have good fun. That a lot of the brokers ended up buying the pubs. So Butler's, for example, they bought the Bow Wine Vaults, which is a well-known wine bar in London.
Uh-huh.
And other brokers, we had an in-house bar. So I think on our 5th floor, we converted that into a bar where we'd have clients come in, because otherwise you'd have the whole staff scattered all over the city, not knowing where they were, and no mobile phones.
So, okay, that brings up another point. And I guess having an in-house bar, that's dangerous as it is. I mean, I can attest to that. But isn't part of the fun? I mean, you're entertaining clients. You're getting them a little loosey goosey because you guys are having some drinks and some cocktails, or a lot of drinks and cocktails. But isn't part of the fun of also being able to mingle with some of the other public as well?
The public didn't really come into the city. Was just like a trading arena, and that was it. And and the city comprises of money broking, banking, insurance broking, commodities, and they would all have their own separate areas. Like, funny enough, last night I was in a place called Leadenhall Market in the city, which was always traditionally Lloyd's of London, the insurance brokers. They always drank there. No one else would go near there. And then the commodity houses would all drink around a building called Plantation House, where all the commodity markets were linked. So each area had its sort of own little clique of people around it. And we'd bump into each other, and we'd make friends with other brokers, or rivalries with other brokers, and have a laugh and a drink. But I think that the in-house bars sprung out of the very old city tradition of having directors' dining rooms. And the directors would have a dining room, and they'd have a cook and a cook's assistant who would produce a meal for the directors every day. And those eventually shifted down to the staff having them, and we'd been allowed to invite clients in. And they were just hysterical.
So tell me or tell us. I mean, it's obviously you and I having this conversation, but I know everybody else is listening in too. Tell us about the meals and having your own cook or your own chef. What was that like?
They were extraordinary. We had when I was at RP Martin, we had a South African woman called Maggie who was absolutely fierce. Not a bad cook at all, but if you didn't like her food, she'd just tip it on your head. Literally, would pick the soup up or the steak up or whatever it was and just dump it on you. And it didn't matter whether you were a client or whether you were a broker or one of the staff, he would just do that. And it's just like really, really funny occasions. And we'd have sort of big burns to celebrate Scotland. We'd have big burns lunches where all the Scottish guys in the office would go in, and he'd have a bagpiper and she'd have haggis. But they were just really, really funny lunches. And I don't really remember, I guess beef Wellington was always on the menu, which was a favourite, lots of red meat. I don't remember desserts at all. All I do remember is lots of port and kummel and rusty nails, which I can't remember what that is, a whiskey. It was a filthy drink. It was absolutely disgusting. And
a rusty nail.
A rusty nail, it's Drambuie whiskey, I think it was. It was just absolutely guaranteed that you couldn't stand up after that. And then you'd have these drinking games. Like there's one called Dead Flies, and you'd all be standing up and you'd have to drink a toast very, very quickly. And the last one to drink it, and then you'd shout out Dead Flies, and then everyone had to get on the floor, put their arms and legs in the air and wave them around like that. And the last person to do that had to drink another toast. And you get employees from, dare I say, at the Bank of England behaving like that, just on their backs with their legs and arms in the air. These are serious guys. So, that element of fun has long gone, really long gone.
Oh my gosh. That would be pretty funny. I'm just like trying to imagine myself, drinking with some of the guys at the Federal Reserve. And I'm sure that happens at maybe a little on the down low, but so tell us a little bit about the you had different names of the restaurants. Do you remember them all that you used to go to?
No, I can't remember them all. But just harking back to what I said, the great thing was that you built these relationships, and the discount houses who are like the go-between between the Bank of England and the markets would be there, and they get to know you. And if you had a problem, you could have a quiet word with them, man to man. I've got a problem with such and such a bank. I've got a problem with this bank, or the bank's because I've got a problem with this broker. A word in your ear, and it was sorted. No sort of FCA. We were self-regulated, and by knowing people, you could do that, and that was a fantastic system, absolutely brilliant, because people behaved.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. So
Which was really odd.
I know you guys were very gentry, right? And everybody is, proper, and you dressed well, you acted well.
Moderately well.
Yeah, but did you ever have any ever have any scuffles with the other brokers, like physically?
Yeah, I've certainly had scuffles with brokers. And there were one or two guys that I've worked with who would have too many drinks and they would just look for a fight. Yeah, and that it didn't really matter. They would just turn around and look for a fight. Those battling Bill Hempsall, who would just love a scrap in the afternoon, sacked by RP Martin, still coming back 3 months later, sitting in his desk in the afternoon. No one would dare tell him to leave. There's a guy I work with called Scrapper Harris. And he just, it's a dreadful story. I don't know if I should tell this. I had to go up to Halifax with him, and Halifax is a northern town.
Yeah.
And we arrived up in a BMW, and he wound down the window and he saw this chap, and he said to the chap, "Where's your flat cap?" And Northerners are famed for having a flat cap and a dog called a whippet. And the bloke looked at him, said, "What?" He said, "And where's your effing whippet?" And the bloke went berserk and came over and went to hit him. And next thing you know, Scrapper's out the door, he's pummeling this bloke, and police are called. And, he just had something wrong in his mind. But he was always, there were 2 or 3 people who were always looking for a fight. And we always had rugby players. That was the other thing. We always employed a rugby player to protect us.
They're like, hold my teeth. Hold on.
Yeah. That's right. Because they were, they're big lads. They weren't making any money. They were amateurs at the time. Lovely, lovely guys. There was a guy called Alice the Bigger, who's sadly no longer with us, who was a rugby international for Scotland. Big man. He's got to be 6'2" and really, really broad. Never want to get involved in a fight, but if there's something going on, he'd just pick the bloke up and sort of move him out of the way. It's very, very. I mean, we had an occasional scrap in the office when someone nicked a deal. And we thought that it'd been done wrongly. I guess it's a very different.
Well, when you mix testosterone with some alcohol, and it's bound to happen. But it even sounds like Scrappy didn't even need alcohol.
No, he was just ready. He was just ready for it. It just. I don't know. God knows what happened to it. But let's go back to your question. So I managed to avoid remembering restaurants. The 2 restaurants I really remember, there's one called the Long Bar, or the Grill and Cheese, which is the building's still there, but the restaurant's long gone, which everyone went to. It was just a steak bar, and it was a really funny old restaurant. And that was sort of like you go and have a steak and chips, and that was it. Then there's a restaurant still going called Sweetings, which is a fish restaurant, one of the first restaurant I think my father took me to in the city. And it was wonderful. You basically had traditional English fish, not fish and chips, but you'd have haddock and a poached egg, and very, very English. And you'd drink pints of Guinness in a pewter mug. And occasionally they had another drink called Black Velvet, which was Guinness and champagne, which was lethal.
Wow.
And then in the summer they'd have Royal Pimm's, which was Pimm's and champagne, a pint of that and you'd be all over the place. But above all else, the major restaurant that RP Martin used, and a lot of the traders used, was a restaurant called the City Circle, which was virtually beneath RP Martin's offices. And it was run by a guy called Richard Reynolds, so I can remember him now. And we all had accounts there, and accounts baby occasionally got paid and occasionally didn't get paid. And because he knew that you'd go in there and you'd run up account because you didn't know what you were doing. I guess credit cards weren't really even around then.
No, probably not.
Just came out. And he had a marvelous waitress called Big Val, who was this very big, buxom blonde lady who didn't go very much for clothes, shall we say. And she was famous for her entertainment, and her partner was a little sidekick, a lovely gay Spanish guy, and I think his name was Tony, and they were just like a comedy act. They were so funny. And that bar would open at 11 o'clock, and it just didn't shut. until you were thrown out. But that's the one restaurant I really remember above all others, and spent much too much in my youth. And I'm sure there are others that hopefully someone can remind me of some of the places, and hopefully you'll nobody ring up and say, you've sold an account here, can you come and settle it?
Well, that is let's settle up. That is a plea from Mr. Dick Matthews. For those of you that are reminiscing right now and listening to these stories from Richard, make sure, if you remember and recall any of those old restaurants, make sure you jump down in the comments below if you're watching us on YouTube, and chime in and tell Dick which restaurants you remember. Dick, it's funny. I sit here and listen to your stories, and I envision it happening. I like envisioning this little bit larger Val woman and her her partner, and cracking jokes, and it's fun to think about, and imagining what life was back then versus the way it is today. And I think these stories that you tell are so important for people to not only hear, but to understand how life was and how life was different. And I know technology has improved executions and liquidity and the way we interact globally with each other. I mean, you and I having this type of conversation 20 years ago just didn't happen. So there's a lot of great things about technology, but a lot of things that it really killed. And I think a lot of it was maybe the spirit of the way the financial industry used to be in the past. Yeah,
that's very true. And it all sounds great fun, and that we all out drinking and never doing any work. We actually worked really, really hard as well. I've got to say that it was a very pressurized, and still is a very pressurized job. People just think you all had good fun and everything, but it was hard work.
Well, just like you said last in our last episode, at least you guys only had a 3-day work week. So. Hey, Dick, I want to say it's been wonderful being able to talk to you again, and I look forward to continuing our Tales from the Trading Desk series. I know the next week we're going to be discussing, kind of the relationship between banks and brokers, and self-regulation with before the bank with the Bank of England, and different topics that I think are going to be very fascinating for people to hear.
Sure, I hope so, and have a good week.
Well, thank you, Richard. And guys and gals, if you like hearing these stories, make sure you subscribe to the channel, to the Trader Summit channel, so you don't miss any of these great stories from Dick Matthews. And also give us a thumbs up if you enjoy these stories, and make sure you chime in the comments if you remember something that Dick didn't mention, or he might have forgotten. So
or may not want to remember.
May not want to. Maybe it's a story you're not going to be telling on camera. All right.
Fantastic.
Hey, Dick, have a great week, and thanks for joining us this week.
Great. And you too. Cheers now. Bye.
Bye-bye.